Good afternoon, and thank you for joining me in another swashbuckling episode of Groovy Van Picker. I went to the normal thrift store rounds today and yesterday, and it was a bit of a flop. Nothing. So, basically, I'm going to kind of shift gears today and go on a different topic, and that is how I got into the reselling and van life. There's it's. I'm gonna go ahead and start off with how I got into the reselling business because it's gonna be kind of a different couple episodes. I guess the reselling thing I've had the fever my whole life. I've always been a bit of a pack rat. Hell, so was my father. And even as little kids, me and my friend used to go dumpster diving, and we used to go dumpster diving. Even checking out local little yard sales around the neighborhood, and whatnot. And we used to take all this stuff we found in the dumpsters or abandoned houses or whatever, just out in, people, big trash day, day after Christmas. And we put it in a shopping cart and go around the neighborhood and try to sell it. Or we'd have a little yard sale in front of the house. And we did okay, a couple candy bars, when you're an 8-year-old kid, 10-year-old kid, that's, $5 is a million. Back in 1982, 81, when you could actually buy something for $5. And so, the fever has always kind of been with me with that. And I used to always go to the swap meets later on because, I used to always look into, I used to always either be into something different every other week or just fascinating stuff. And I was checking out thrift stores before it was cool. Just because it was always fascinating and interesting and odd stuff in there. But I never really thought about making a living out of that. I saw maybe a couple extra bucks or whatever. And I've even helped out at the swap meet later on with some friends of mine. Fix that hat. Vintage NRA hat. I collect old stuff. I always have been into old stuff. And but I used to always, even help out at the swap meet, make a few bucks and stuff like that. And later on in life, I discovered eBay. Okay, that was a big friend of mine. I discovered eBay when I was in like my mid-20s. I think I discovered it in about 99, I think it was. Right when it was just... But at that time, I was working a traditional job, and I couldn't really dive into it full tilt because I didn't quite have all the knowledge yet to know how to do it. And so I used to dabble in it. I used to go picking yard sales and junk yards to find stuff. And I made a few bucks here and there. And I always kind of worked at, a little side hustle. Didn't do too bad. I remember one of my first big, or kind of big, picks that I made. It was right around 2000, 2001. I was really kind of getting into eBay, but still working a traditional job. Because at the time I was married, and so I couldn't really take a lot of risks. The job was steady. However, eBay kind of, yeah, we got kids. Every dime helps. So, I remember one time I drug home this big old ugly console out of a 65 Dodge Coronet. And my wife at the time looks at that and goes, "What did you drag home?" I'm like, "This is a console out of an old Dodge." And she's like, "But you sold your Dodge." Yeah, this is going on eBay. Who's going to give 2 cents for that? Well, we went and took pictures of it and put it up there on eBay. This is when the buy it now feature first started rearing its head. And I tried it. So, I put a buy it now of $100. That was cheap. And I'm like, why not? I paid $20 for the thing, plus shipping. So, Brandy was like, yeah, you're not going to sell that. Following morning, I got up, looked at the computer. I was laughing. And Brandy walks in. "What are you snickering at? Remember that old console you said no one's going to pay 2 cents for?" Right on. But the thing was, Brandy was not a car person, and I am. And there's been a lot of vice versa too, where Brandy would have brought home something. I'd be like, "What is that?" She's like, "Trust me, it'll sell." And it sold because it was something that she knew about. So, but we were both kind of in that racket too. But I did okay. A couple $100 a month. Not bad, It's formula and diapers or whatever for the kids. Or, Christmas money or whatever. So, yeah, it was not too bad. And then I got divorced. And I was still kind of dabbling in eBay. And I was doing pretty well, but not as good as I could. Remember, I didn't have a smartphone. This is back in 2003 when I got divorced. I had the old Nokia, about the size of a pack of cigarettes, and the biggest feature was texting at 5 cents a pop. But I got unlimited night and weekends. So, I was still dabbling in, but working in a traditional job too, because I don't want to risk, diving into something that I didn't really know what I was doing. Because, we still had the kids and everything. So, I was doing pretty well at it, though. I was selling stuff left and right. Just stuff that I found at the swap meets or yard sales or floating around the house or my little shop that I had. And there was a few bucks here and there, not bad, plus my traditional job. And I was doing that, along with my traditional job. And then a few years later, I moved to Kansas, and I was still dabbling in eBay. Like I said, I was doing pretty well with eBay, just finding random stuff and reselling it. I did the same thing in Kansas. And even after we broke up, I was still reselling on eBay. And then I moved back. Well, let me back up a little bit. After I broke up with my ex-old lady, my girlfriend I had in Kansas, I was kind of just, had a little apartment, and I was kind of bumming around, looking, just seeing what was happening. And I was poking around the swap meet, and I was checking out these other little mom and pop thrift stores they had all over the place, and how they were doing. They were making a lot of money. I'm like, I'd like to have one of these because I've always wanted something like that. For years, I thought it'd be really cool to have like a little store where people just kind of dig through and they find a treasure, bring it up, and you tell them, so many dollars. And I've always liked that concept of having that kind of a place. And the little thrift stores, mom and pop operations in Kansas, a lot of them were like that. You just had a bunch of stuff laying around in bins and boxes on shelves. What you want for this? About $10, And it was interesting. And they were making money hand over fist. And what got me really thinking about the swap meets was because I've always kind of been intrigued about traveling. Always. And so I was at the swap meet, talking to a few people. I'm like, oh yeah, I paid my bills. I'm like, this. And they tell me, yeah, they make a couple grand a month sometimes. And these are some pretty decent swap meets, booze. And so, I was thinking maybe I could make a living out of this. So after a few months, I moved back to the West Coast. I was still doing a lot of eBay stuff. And I dabbled in the swap meets, but I wasn't doing that well. I was buying the wrong stuff. And the swap meet that we had out there in Chico had like 12 customers. This is that swap meet that I said earlier about the guy where I was selling, junk TVs and stuff, and I started getting the smaller, interesting, more antique stuff. And one of the other vendors kind of got pissed off at me and told me I should go back to selling dishes and TVs, let the antiques to them. And I pretty much told him to stuff it. But I knew I had the right idea. I just had to work on getting the right stuff. And at this Chico swap meet, basically it was a vendor selling to one another. There was hardly anything going out the door. What sold at the Chico swap meet stayed at the Chico swap meet. It had no customers. I tried different venues too, and I did pretty well. We came to Torino, me and the kids, and I tried the swap meet. Didn't do too bad. But it wasn't quite cutting it, and I wasn't finding anything good for eBay. I find a few good things here and there. But I went back, I found a traditional job. I was doing petitioning and doing very well petitioning, but that kind of ended. So I went to a traditional security guard job, and I wasn't making any money. In fact, they never wanted to put me on any decent jobs. They always wanted me to go out to these jobs way the hell out in the middle of nowhere for 4 hours. One time I actually spent more on gas getting to work than I made. So yeah, that job just wasn't cutting it. But then I moved down to the Bay Area, found a full-time job. That was okay. And then I found one that I liked better, but I was still dabbling in the swap meets and getting more into the swap meets. And I was doing pretty well in San Jose and Oakland, depending on what I sold. And I was selling all kinds of oddball stuff. I was even making these little knife sheaths that will quick draw, and you pull out and the knife opens up. I was making and selling those. And not doing too shabby, but I still had to work my traditional job. So, but my mistake was I kept trying to spend $1 to make a dime. And because I was so wanting to find stuff to resell, but I was spending too much money on this stuff, that it was like with space rent and gas getting there, it's like a snake eating its own tail. And so then I kind of, at this time too, I bought me a smartphone. This is back in about 2010, 11. I bought a smartphone. And I started getting more into learning how to source. And sourcing from different places, while still working my traditional job. And working this out in my head of how to do it. And I even discovered some more sources, right, around that time too, that were very good sources for smalls, which I'm not going to reveal because it's already been, swamped anyway. But it's still a secret little source that I have, besides thrift stores and whatnot. And I was doing okay with the picking and reselling. And then I decided to move. We were going to move to Missouri. So I moved to Chico for a couple months and stayed there. We started getting everything ready to move to Missouri with the rest of the family. And even then, I still had a good inventory. When I lived in Missouri, I had a couple flea market booths in different places. And so I'd be going out looking for stuff to resell while working a traditional job out there. And I had 3 little flea market booths. These are the kind where you set up your flea market booth and then you come back every week for your paycheck, or every month actually. And I was turning a little bit of a profit. Plus, I was doing my eBay. I was picking those flea market booths actually and selling on eBay. And I wasn't doing too shabby. I didn't do too bad. Still not where I wanted to be, but not too bad. So, Missouri didn't quite work out, and so we all moved back to Chico. And for about a year, I was doing exclusively eBay and swap meets. Only thing is my van was falling apart, and I didn't have really... It was doing okay, but not great. So I was doing that exclusively for a year. Then I moved, saved a few dollars, moved to Reno. And I was still doing the same thing where I'm selling the swap meets, picking and selling on eBay, and I'm working a traditional job. And right now what I'm doing is getting my vehicle situation improved, which I've pretty much done. I have 2 vans and a motorhome. And I have some pretty decent inventory. So right now, I'm at the point where if I was to lose my job, I'd be okay. And so I am fixing now to start traveling and selling full-time at the swap meets. Again, and eBay. But that's pretty much a little synopsis of how I got started in this line of work and how I really got to thinking about it and where I'm at now. And so I think in the near future, that's what I'm going to be doing, since I've been spending the past decade about the past decade setting the table for this and learning about it and trying to improve my skills. So in the near future, I am going to be selling at the swap meets and eBay full time. That's my goal, and I think I can make it happen. So anyway, that is my little story about how I got into what I'm working on, and hope you like it. If you don't like it, there's not a whole lot not to like. All right, wait.